Hi guys, welcome to What It's Really Like Georgia Tech with Sid Gore. We actually went to school together, which is really interesting. But
Yeah,
Sid, thanks for being here. Do you want to just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
sure. Thanks for having me, Ina. My name is Sid Gore. I live in the Washington, DC area right now. I went to Georgia Tech and graduated in 2017 with my undergrad, and I worked for a bit, and then I actually went back for my grad school degree and graduated that in 2020 of last year. So yeah, just excited to share. I'm a big Georgia Tech fan.
Love it. I can tell
Whatever.
from the t-shirt. So
Yeah, I had to
before
get a uniform.
before you got to Georgia Tech, had you ever been to the US before?
Yeah, so I'm not really the stereotypical international student. I actually am an American citizen, and I was born in India, and my family moved to the US when I was 2 years old. So by and large, I'm American. But in that, there's some complications because I moved back to India when I was in middle school. My parents wanted us to have an experience of the culture over there. So I lived in Pune for 3 years, and then my parents moved back to America actually when I was in high school. So that's where we met in KIS in South India, the international boarding school, because I didn't want to move back here and lose that year of credit transfer. So yeah, kind of a mixed hybrid experience. But I have worked intensively and worked alongside a lot of international students at Georgia Tech. I was an international ambassador, which is an organization there on campus, which helps, very similar to what you're trying to do, but just at the student level, help our peers get acclimated to this new environment because Georgia Tech does have a significant international community, as you know.
Oh, for sure. So even though America is partially your home country, when it came to the differences between America and India, what surprised you the most?
Oh yeah, it was pretty huge actually because I think college on its own is a big change, and so having to change from an Indian international boarding school to American college, that was a big shift. I think the cultures are actually very different. I know that a lot of it has been bridged by Netflix and social media and all that, so everyone's aware. But actually living in the two different places, the day-to-day culture of individualism here in America and then collectivism here there in India is quite noticeable. And a lot of people, a lot of students that come here from India and China and the Southeast Asian countries as well, they do feel that difference. So I think day to day that would be most shocking. I think everyone from international countries these days is exposed to like the buildings and transportation and all the kind of like high level stuff, but on a deeper level, people do think differently here than maybe in some of those Asian countries.
For sure. And would you think that there's anything that international students in specific need to know before they get to the US?
I think, yeah, I think if they do some prep work on stuff that matters to them, it's going to make their transition here a lot easier. I think if they can reach out to people, a lot of us have friends or friends of friends who live here. But I think what I found working as an international ambassador and then just mentoring people out after I graduated, excuse me, college, um, kind of taking the help is really important. So if you are coming here from an international background and you're coming to America, connect beforehand with a few people and just talk to them about their experience. And by those people should be maybe current juniors in the college that you're going to go to, and that'll help a lot. Just kind of smooth over the surprises. I think some people think that, oh, I'm going to this new country, so I need to do everything on my own and like take it as a challenge. But really, it becomes a lot easier have if you take interest and take the support that is given to you. So I know at Georgia Tech, there's an Office of International Education, which does a lot of work. For that is their reason for existing, is to make your life easier if you're an international student. But what I saw as an international ambassador was that a lot of students that come here are just so caught up in this thing of college and the new country. And I don't blame them; it's a lot. But just reach out and get those resources early. I think that would help a lot.
Okay, perfect. Now I want to dive into some Georgia Tech specific questions. So those students who are looking to apply to
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, or if anyone's like Georgia Tech's exactly where they want to go, they can get some of that insider access for someone who's been there
Yep.
for both undergrad and grad schools. So what was your living situation at Georgia Tech? I guess you can tell us about both.
Yeah, so starting with undergrad, like most American universities, the first year you have to live on campus, barring very extraneous circumstances. So they pretty much mandate that you live on campus dorms. I think that's very helpful because you meet other freshmen in those dorms, you build your network. It's safer because it's the whole community of people that are coming there from different areas of the world and the US. So that was the first year. And then starting sophomore year, you have a choice to continue that living on campus or getting a dorm, or excuse me, getting an apartment off campus. And so I'll talk briefly about the pros and cons. So at Georgia Tech, as you know, it's in Midtown Atlanta. I think one thing that students interested in Georgia Tech, pursuing that as their primary option, should understand is that Georgia Tech is a unique campus because it's a big campus in the middle of a city. And so normally with schools like either have locations outside cities where they're big campuses and it's a college town, right? That you'll hear that a lot in America, or they're inside cities but just have one building like NYU or some of the universities on the East Coast. But Georgia Tech is weird because it's this big campus and it's in Midtown Atlanta. So you have the Coca-Cola headquarters next to you. You have a bunch of big companies with tall buildings, and then there's this campus with a lot of greenery. So that's a great plus. And I think maybe some students won't get a chance to see the campus beforehand, but that's, I think, one of the things that Georgia Tech really has going for it, because with that comes the opportunities of connecting with those companies in the area, getting that urban feel, high activity. It's a lot easier to navigate Atlanta from Georgia Tech than it would be another university in a college town, because when you get further from urban cities, urban centers, the transportation usually declines. Like just in America, that's a rule. So dense cities like New York will have great public transportation. You don't really need to have a car. Atlanta is kind of in between. You don't need a car, but it definitely makes life a little easier. If you're coming here from outside the country, you won't need a car. I will say that. Unless you plan to do a lot of road trips to different cities in America, there is a bus system, there's a metro system, and all that. But getting back to your question, living situation. So do that research beforehand. The internet is great, but there's sometimes too much information. And so my advice to someone who, let's say, is starting in a year or two at Georgia Tech would be to connect with someone who lives there from your hometown or from your state or from your country and ask them what their experience was, because that firsthand experience is invaluable. And so my thing there would be, Atlanta is great, but it has some bad areas, and you might find a cheaper apartment there, but you don't want to live there. So on-campus housing is kind of expensive for what it is, but with it, you get the guarantee of, it's maintained by the university. So you're not dealing with another company and all that. They know you're an international student. So they're, I would say not more lenient, but they just are familiar with handling all the paperwork with not being a permanent American citizen. But on the other side, if you live off campus, it can be a lot cheaper, especially if you share an apartment. And I know cost is a major thing when it comes to housing for a lot of students, whether they're domestic students or coming from international. So you need to balance that.
Can you give us just like an estimate of rent in Atlanta? I know it'd be different for wherever you stayed.
Where I lived was called the Flats, THE space FLATS. A lot of graduate students live in that particular apartment community because it's about a 10-minute walk from Georgia Tech campus, just up a hill. Okay. And I paid, I think at the time it was $800, but that was $800 a month, but that was for students. It was student housing. So everyone in the building was student housing. I would say if you do live off campus, try and find some of these student housing things just because the safety is better. And it's just, you don't want to go, you already have a lot of stuff changing, coming to a new country and trying to study and meet new people. You don't need to have additional headaches like paperwork of a landlord and stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents, but people will go there, with what they feel. I paid $800 and that was a 4-bedroom, 4-bath. So we were sharing a kitchen and a living room, but we all had our own spaces and nice amenities. Like we had a pool and all that. Mm-hmm.
So for a freshman, is there any specific dorm that has like more or less clout than the other? They should be looking for one that, I don't know, has the better amenities. I know that was the thing when we were in college. There were the new dorms and the old dorms.
Well, Georgia Tech has kind of a housing community. There are multiple dorms, but it's pretty centralized. It's not too spread out. There's the undergraduate housing area and the graduate housing area. And there's really not, there's different buildings, but all in all, they kind of renovate them on the same cycle. So as far as I'm aware, there's no building that you should be really gunning towards.
Okay, perfect. So when it came to actually getting to college and making friends and socializing, how did you navigate that process?
Yeah, so I had pretty much what I would anticipate international students having. The problem is that I'm coming to a new state. Pretty much, my parents were living in Atlanta at the time when I started college here. So I had family, like my primary family, but I didn't have the friend group that a lot of people come to college with. Georgia Tech is no different. It's actually a state school. So it's a state university. It just happens to be a really good one. That's why everyone around the world knows it. But what that means is that a lot of people that come there are domestic and state students within the state of Georgia coming to Georgia Tech. That's actually its primary charter, is to educate students of the state. The same thing, if you come to Georgia Tech, you learn about University of Georgia. It's another, rival school or whatever, football rivalry, but it's in the same. And so these universities' goals is to educate in-state students. And the result is that a lot of people come into these universities with a pretty large friend group out of high school. These are the people that they've grown up with their whole life. On the other hand, there's a lot of people that don't, because we have students from outside Georgia, outside the US. And so just because you don't have a friend group doesn't mean you won't make one. So the way I navigated it was just joining a lot of clubs. And from my experience in college, I will say the two things to make friends are spending time with those people, and then also kind of centering around a common interest. It's you can make friends just kind of randomly on the street, but I think it takes a lot more effort to kind of keep and deepen those connections. So if you can focus on dance or music or a certain, robotics is big at Georgia Tech. So like stuff like that, whether it's social, cultural, technical, and then join a club, make friends there. I did rowing throughout high school and college. And so that I made a lot of friends there just because of the amount of time you spent. So I would say when you're trying to navigate that, if you're from an international student background, you will have clubs at Georgia Tech of literally your country's similar backgrounds. And so connect with those. But also what I have seen is sometimes international students stay to those, and it kind of defeats the purpose of coming to a whole new country. So push yourself. And then also if you're from India, join the Indian club at Georgia Tech, which is huge. It's huge. Like everyone does that. But also join, like if you're into dance or painting or something, to kind of network more broadly. That would be
so
my
one more
2 cents.
question I have is that, so we've kind of established that joining a student organization is great for sociability and just making friends, networking, everything. But we've also heard that it's not the easiest thing to become a part of, like the executive board, because colleges are a little bit competitive. So even just getting in and getting on the board, there's an interview process and there's like all these other kind of hurdles that are in the way. Do you have any recommendations of how students can get ahead of that? Because for international students, it's a little bit surprising to have to go through that to join something.
Yeah, I would say at Georgia Tech, my experience has been there's no hurdles to join. If you are interested in robotics, for example, or cars, there's car clubs at Georgia Tech which build their own cars. You can join, but to get to that next tier of where you're leading the people, I think there is competitiveness, and that's just by design. A lot of time and effort goes into those projects, whether it's dance or painting or whatever interest you have. And so to kind of lead the club, you do need to just show up. That's all I would say. It's not hard. Just show up, put the time in. And also another thing, there's a lot of people coming to college with resume building mindset, like, oh, I need to become VP of everything in 4 years. But it's like, just enjoy your time. Make sure you're joining clubs that you actually want to do, not just for your resume. Because at the end of the day, if you have a good time and you just kind of put your heart into it, it'll show in your interviews when you do interview 4 years down the line. So don't just do stuff to get the VP title. And a quick thing is that Georgia Tech does have a club fair every semester. So every semester they kind of table all the interests, and they're trying to recruit members. An interesting fact is the more members a club has registered, the more funding it gets from Georgia Tech. So they're actually incentivized to get more members as well. So
that's actually really interesting. Yeah, it definitely wasn't the same at Emory, but I think that's actually really great, because then people can get more involved. I know you said a little bit that the dorm that you stayed in, or the student housing, was 10 minutes walk from campus. So could you just tell us a little bit about the walkability of Georgia Tech?
Yeah, Georgia Tech is extremely walkable. As I said earlier, every city, the trade-off is that there are unsafe roads. So like Home Park is one area where a lot of people live, but it's also unsafe. So you just need to know how to not put yourself at risk and go down bad roads. For example, if it's 2 a.m., don't be on your phone walking down the road. That's literally, every time something happens at Georgia Tech, the police department sends out something called a Clery alert, CLERY, which is like, hey, someone was robbed on the street at 2 a.m. This is what happened. So you have great visibility even on campus and the extended off campus, what's happening, what the unsafe areas are. So read those. Like, don't do what that guy did. If someone was walking on their phone at 2 a.m. not paying attention, and they got someone stole their phone or whatever, just kind of avoid that. But the walk is very walkable. There's also the Stinger shuttles, which are kind of the internal bus network for Georgia Tech, and they're
Hmm.
open to the public. They're free, especially students can use them to get to classes, but also kind of explore Atlanta a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, there's public transport connections to MARTA, which is the local bus and metro system.
Perfect. And
A lot
now
of
kind of
people
like,
have bicycles, by the way. One last thing. A lot of people bring
okay.
bicycles. And a lot of people at Georgia Tech, for whatever reason, have those electrical skateboards. Like
Okay.
that's how they get everywhere. Yeah.
I love that. I think we used to have like the Lime scooters. I don't know if they're still there anymore, but I think they were like great to get around campus. One thing I wanted to also dive into is the food scene. So,
Mhm.
can you tell us a little about the food scene on campus at Tech, and then maybe also just like a little bits of your favorites that are off campus?
Yeah. So there is a dining hall. It's pretty good. A lot of, I mean, especially freshman year, you'll be eating there a lot. I know some people do try and not get the meal plan just to save on costs, but I'm not sure if it works out for them. I didn't do that, so I can't speak too much to it. But just know that you don't want to be worrying too much about having to cook, at least for your first year. So the dining halls are very convenient. You can go in and swipe your card, and just kind of like a buffet style uh, situation. I actually cook a lot. So starting sophomore year, I used to cook a lot just because of the athletic nature of rowing. I needed certain food. But there's a ton of food options around Georgia Tech. It can add up if you just eat out every day. I know some of my friends had that problem. But learning how to cook some basic stuff will help you a lot. And if you can learn from your family before you come to America, all the better, and get comfortable with
Okay, perfect. No, I feel the same way. It was like very easy to get tempted by all these places, but
it.
Emery's meal
Yeah.
plan was pretty great. So I was happy for the most part. I think the
Mhm.
next section I just want to touch on a little bit is academics. So kind
Yeah.
of coming in without as much visibility, how did you decide what classes that you should take?
Yeah. I have a lot of insight here, because I have mentored people after graduating and even during it. So you have college advisors, which make a schedule for you and they recommend your classes based on your interest. But what you have to understand is there's hundreds of students for each advisor. And so you're not going to get great feedback. Even at a
Hmm.
school like Georgia Tech, we have great advisors, but it's just you need to do your own homework and your own research and sometimes override what the advisor is telling you. I did that a lot. One thing that you'll find at Georgia Tech is you will need to properly align your coursework, not just for this semester and next semester, but throughout the end of your, like, looking a year out, because there's prerequisites and co-requisite classes, which means you might be fine right now to take whatever classes, but if you're trying to take renewable energy in a year, that might have a prerequisite class of 3 or 4 classes. So you need to plan ahead so you can get those out of the way, so that when you get to that point, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. That's kind of my
Yeah.
analogy. So it's kind of hard to figure that out on your own. I would say get a mentor. That would be my advice here. And a mentor doesn't have to be like a CEO of Coca-Cola. It can be someone who's 2 years ahead of you, and
Hmm.
you can just ask them like, hey, I just got here. I'm trying to understand the class system, not just registering, but like I'm taking these 4 classes. What was your experience? What was hard? I do that a lot, and I still do it because just managing your schedule will make you have a lot better experience. Academics, choosing your classes and your major, that's a good one. One thing I will say for international students in particular is in America, it's very common to change your major. Um, so take advantage of that. It's not like, oh, like you weren't succeeding at computer science, so I changed to mechanical engineering. People don't really think about it that way. It's just, oh, I didn't like that like I thought I would.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
don't be afraid
that's
to
good
change.
to know. That's
Yeah,
very good to know for someone like that. It's no pressure. Explore what you want
absolutely.
and
And
pursue.
and you don't really lose any money or time really. You might have to take 1 or 2 extra classes, but if you come in as a computer science major and you get to your second year, you're doing your intro class, you're like, I hate this, you can change to biomedical engineering or mechanical or aerospace, something that you think you would like better. And there's no pressure, and it's almost encouraged for people to change once. But I don't know, I didn't change. I did mechanical, so I was very happy with my major.
Okay, great. Would you say that there's any courses you definitely recommend international students to take while they're at Georgia Tech?
I think that would be a best question for people in your major. So when you do
Okay.
get to Georgia Tech, I don't think there's something you need to take specifically. Your first 2 years are pretty structured. It's kind of like high school, where it's not, you're not going to change too much in the first 2 years. But your major classes here in the U.S., which is your third and fourth year, your junior and senior year, there's a lot of options. Georgia Tech is very open-ended. In fact, you can, like, I was mechanical, I took classes in environmental engineering, like 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of bridge the gap between majors and really make it your own experience. But to do that intelligently, I would say talk to someone who's a senior. They would have better insight in your major. So if anyone has questions on mechanical, reach out to me. But for the other ones, I won't speak to it.
Okay, cool. Would you say that, or what would you say was the most difficult part about adjusting from academics in high school? And we did go to the same high school, so I completely understand like that portion, to something at a collegiate level.
Yeah. So speaking to the international students in particular, a lot of countries have different ways of doing high school. And understanding that, just know that your first year, especially at Georgia Tech, will be kind of like advanced high school. It's going to be the same classes. You're going to be taking chemistry, biology, physics, English, but just kind of warming up. It's like a warm up for college. So, and then the second year, the sophomore year, there's these thing called weed out classes. Weed out classes meaning they kind of test you to make sure that if you're, for example, mechanical engineering, physics 1 and 2 are weed out classes, which means like, hey, they make these classes harder to make sure that you are ready for what's coming up ahead in the 3rd and 4th years. So those are not really fun classes because there's harder homeworks and they're trying to just kind of vet you out. It's like a test, trial by fire. But what I will say is don't choose your class as your major because it's the top ranked program. That's one thing I wanted to say earlier. So Georgia Tech is #1 in industrial engineering in America for the past 30 years, right? So that's great, but don't just choose that because it's of the rankings. And the same with mechanical. I think we're we're in the top 10. I don't remember the number, but so don't just choose the top ranked programs because of the ranking, because that doesn't really matter to your individual self. It's great for the school, and it does matter when you mention it to your employer, like they know that it's a top ranked program, that's fine. But choose something that you can see yourself doing the jobs for later. So a lot of times, especially at Georgia Tech, what I find is that people are too bought into the major, like aerospace or mechanical or biomedical, and that's fine, but that only matters for 4 years. And once you graduate, it doesn't, what matters more is what you're doing 9 to 5, what you're doing every day. So if you do choose to go mechanical, make sure you understand what jobs are waiting for you on the other side, because that's kind of why you're here. You're here to get a job eventually and then kind of contribute. So that research is pretty lacking, I would say, just across the board for college students. So make sure you do that. I think doubly important for international students because you're investing sometimes a lot more into college. And so don't choose a major which doesn't pay for itself within a few years. I will say that. It's important. Yeah.
That's a good one. Would you say that Georgia Tech has any notoriously difficult majors? I know you said the 2 most popular, but anything that's known to be.
I think I think if you come to Georgia Tech, you will be challenged in different ways, but it's a hard school. And hard just means that you're pushing yourself and learning. So they're not trying to fail you out of it. They're not trying to make you fail, but most majors, even the business school you need to be willing to put in the work to earn the degree. And it's like cliched, but you'll find it when you come here. You have to kind of, if you've done really well in high school, which is everyone at Georgia Tech, right? Like otherwise they wouldn't have accepted you. You need to push yourself to the next level. And when you get your first C or D, like I got C's and not D, but I got C's, which was mind blowing to me. It's like, how did I get a C? Like I had great grades. So you need to be ready for that and just kind of adapt as you go.
Perfect. I think just kind of to wrap it up, we'd love to know what's your current career path? What are you doing now? And just any other like fun facts that we missed out on.
Yeah, awesome. So as I mentioned, I finished my undergrad in mechanical engineering. That went great. I worked for Home Depot Corporate, which is a home goods store. Like the Home Depot helps sell wood and paint and stuff for people that fix up their house. So I worked at the corporate office for 1.5 years, but I realized I wasn't using my degree, even though the job was great, team was great. So I went back for grad school. Just a quick point there, for all of the degrees at Georgia Tech, at least the engineering ones, aerospace, mechanical, biomedical, industrial, the undergrad will teach you the base layer of what you need. But what you will find is that you'll get to a point in your career where you do need to go back for a graduate degree, because that's where you really dive in to your focus. So you're not going to learn all of aerospace engineering with your aerospace engineering undergrad. It's just unrealistic. So it teaches you a sampling of all the different areas, but you'll go back for grad school, or maybe you'll just learn it through your career if you decide to go that path. So just keep that in the back of your head that you don't have to learn everything during undergrad. It's just kind of the starting of your career. So what I did was I worked there for a year and a half. I went back to Georgia Tech, and it was a lot easier to go back for grad school because I had gone there for undergrad. So I knew the professor who helped me with the process. I still had to submit an application, but it's a lot easier. Georgia Tech also has a popular BSMS program, so Bachelor of Science,
Okay.
Masters of Science, where you just kind of tack on a year or two, and you take additional courses after your undergrad. And at the end, not only do you have a bachelor's, you also have a master's degree. So for folks that might be coming here from an international background, that's a great option because I believe it also extends your stay here in America. If you haven't found a job or something like that, it kind of gives you some flexibility. Master's school is great. Did it in robotics. Very happy with how that turned out. And I work for aerospace company right now doing systems engineering. So
Very
just
cool.
taking it as it comes. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time. I really hope that this will help give people some of that insider access or insight to Georgia Tech. People who are thinking about applying, or maybe someone who's already gotten accepted and they're just evaluating their decision. Would you say there's anything else you wanted to mention about tech before we wrap up?
Well, if anyone has any questions, find me on LinkedIn. I'm currently on the Young Alumni Council, so I'm very involved in Georgia Tech, and I'm happy to help draw you guys to it because you should come to Georgia Tech and not any other school. That's the right answer. But I will say overall, Georgia Tech has been a great school. If you're interested in applying, do some research, but really the experience is great. It's everything I could have asked for. It was difficult, but if you come to Georgia Tech, don't expect to coast and get a degree. You will push yourself, but you will also have a lot of fun. I think some of the stuff that we didn't touch on is Atlanta's a fun city, as you know, you've lived there, or visited, right? Like Midtown a lot from Emory, right? So there's a ton of stuff to do. You have parks and music and events and festivals. And one more thing I will say, I wanted to mention this, is you should study abroad if you're an international student, because Georgia Tech has some really great study abroad programs where it's pretty much you move somewhere else for 6 months, one semester, and then come back, whether that's spring, summer, or fall. We have a big campus in France where I did a study abroad called Georgia Tech Lorraine, where it's actually a satellite campus of Georgia Tech. And fun fact, it's for a lot of international students that I talk to, it's cheaper to study abroad than study on campus at Georgia Tech. Just because of the way that the cost of living situation worked out. So it's not going to be more expensive. It's kind of the same plane ticket anyway. You're flying back and forth during the semester. So and if anyone has any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Sid Gore, SID GORE, and drop me a message so that I know what I can help you with.
Cool. Thanks so much, Sid.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun.